Phantom terror attacks. Offering no evidence, the president says there have been terror attacks that the media have covered up.
The very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it.
Also tonight, tech giants join the court battle to stop the immigration ban.
This sends a really kind of chilling signal to, I think, our partners and our friends globally about what kind of country America is going to become.
A Syrian family gets through the temporary suspension of the ban.
I'm happy like I won the Super Bowl.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Today, President Trump told a U.S. military audience that there have been terrorist attacks that no one knows about because the media choose not to report them. It has been a busy day for presidential statements divorced from reality. Mr. Trump said this morning that any polls that show disapproval of his immigration ban are fake. He singled out a federal judge for ridicule after the judge suspended his ban, and Mr. Trump said that the ruling now means that anyone can enter the country. The president's fictitious claims, whether imaginary or fabricated, are now worrying even his backers, particularly after he insisted that millions of people voted illegally, giving Hillary Clinton her popular vote victory. There's not one state election official, Democrat or Republican, who supports that claim. Margaret Brennan is covering the president.
Radical Islamic terrorists are determined to strike our homeland.
In his first address to the troops as commander-in-chief, President Trump accused journalists of covering up terrorism.
It's gotten to a point where it's not even being reported. And in many cases, the very, very dishonest press doesn't want to report it. They have their reasons, and you understand that.
Mr. Trump offered no examples, and neither did Press Secretary Sean Spicer when he tried to clarify aboard Air Force One.
There's a lot of instances that have occurred where I don't think that they've gotten the coverage it's deserved.
The president's comments come after senior advisor Kellyanne Conway referred last week to a terrorist attack that never took place.
2 Iraqis came here to this country, were radicalized, and they were the masterminds behind the Bowling Green massacre. Most people don't know that because it didn't get covered.
She later said she misspoke, but she had talked about the purported Bowling Green attacks at least 2 other times. Conway now says she was referring to 2 Iraqi refugees accused in 2011 of supporting terrorism. Their arrests were reported in the press.
He's a leader of his country.
The president is also facing criticism from within his own party for these comments to Fox News about Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Putin's a killer. A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent?
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell.
No, I don't think there's any equivalency between the way the Russians that conduct themselves and the way the United States does.
Retired General Barry McCaffrey went further.
One can argue that's the most anti-American statement ever made by the President of the United States, to confuse American values with Putin, who's running a criminal oligarchy.
Today, the Kremlin said that Fox News should apologize for insulting Mr. Putin. The Russian president has held office for more than 17 years and has been accused of having some of his critics killed. Scott, the vice president did come out in defense of Mr. Trump, saying that he merely wanted a fresh start with Russia.
Margaret Brennan at the White House. Tomorrow, an appeals court in San Francisco will hear arguments on whether to reinstate the president's travel ban. In a filing this evening, government lawyers argued that the ban does not discriminate based on religion. It targets country of origin instead. Our chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, is following this.
Lawyers for 2 states urged the appeals court not to reinstate President Trump's travel ban, saying it would unleash chaos again, separating families, stranding our university students and faculty, and barring travel. In a flurry of legal filings, the Trump administration said the ban is necessary to protect national security. Unlike the president, courts do not have access to classified information about the threat posed by terrorist organizations operating in particular nations, the efforts of those organizations to infiltrate the United States, or gaps in the vetting process. But two former Democratic secretaries of state, John Kerry and Madeleine Albright, said in court papers the ban would only help ISIS as a recruiting tool, feeding into the narrative that the United States is at war with Islam. On Friday, Seattle-based federal judge James Robart, ruling in a lawsuit filed by Washington and Minnesota, suspended the travel ban nationwide, reopening entry to people from 7 countries.
I find that the court should and will grant the temporary restraining order.
The Justice Department immediately appealed, and the president himself weighed in on Twitter, calling Robart a so-called judge and writing, "If something happens, blame him and the court system." Today, Mr. Trump defended the ban.
We need strong programs so that people that love us and want to love our country and will end up loving our country are allowed in, not people that want to destroy us and destroy our country.
Now, the appeals court said it will hear arguments tomorrow afternoon, but this is just one of many lawsuits challenging the ban. On Friday, a federal judge in Boston upheld the ban as within the president's authority, setting up a possible showdown, Scott, in the Supreme Court.
Jan Crawford in the Washington newsroom. Thanks. The appeals court received a brief against the ban filed by nearly 100 of America's best-known technology companies. John Blackstone tells us that 60% of highly skilled workers in Silicon Valley were born outside the U.S.
Some of the biggest names in technology are among the 97 companies that joined the brief to the Court of Appeals, forcefully opposing the travel and immigration ban. They argue the order makes it more difficult and expensive for U.S. companies to recruit, hire, and retain some of the world's best employees. It disrupts ongoing business operations.
America has been at the bleeding edge of so many innovative markets, of so many innovative trends, because we're able to work on a global scale.
Aaron Levy is CEO of Box Incorporated, a Silicon Valley software company that signed on to the brief.
Many of our founding employees come from different countries, some of which are actually on the banned list, and so that has a meaningful impact in our culture.
The brief highlights immigrant contributions, noting immigrants or their children founded more than 200 of the companies on the Fortune 500 list, including Apple, Kraft, Ford, General Electric, AT&T, Google, McDonald's, Boeing, and Disney. And the brief says immigrants are nearly 3 times more likely to file patents than U.S.-born citizens.
This is what democracy looks like.
Tech workers have demonstrated against the immigration ban as the industry worries about what's to come, with the president's promises to undo certain international trade agreements.
They would send a really chilling signal to people all around the world that America is not open for business. We're actually closed off.
Late this afternoon, 2 more major tech companies, Tesla and SpaceX, added their names to this brief filed here at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Scott, of course, both companies are led by Elon Musk, who himself is an immigrant from South Africa.
John Blackstone for us tonight. John, thank you. President Trump tweeted yesterday that the suspension of his ban is now allowing people to, quote, pour into the U.S. We don't have a complete picture, but we can tell you that the number of refugees over the last 3 days is 27 families who have gone through a vetting process that can take years. Jerika Duncan was at New York's JFK Airport today when a family from Syria arrived.
This is the moment Dr. Ghassan Asali and wife Sarmad dreamed about for more than 13 years.
I'm happy. I'm happy like I won the Super Bowl like yesterday. I'm very happy.
The reunion with Asali's 2 brothers and their families was supposed to happen 9 days ago, but mid-flight to the U.S., visas for the Christian family from Syria were canceled when President Trump signed the executive order. After landing in Philadelphia, the 6 Syrian immigrants were forced to return home.
Unhuman, what happened to us.
17-year-old Matthew Asali had to wait even longer before joining his relatives.
We did everything by the rules. Everything what we've done was right. We did not do anything illegal.
Why did your family leave?
Over there like war zone. It's not safe yet.
In 2015, their immigration petition finally moved to the active processing stage, which involved multiple background checks and several interviews.
Welcome to America.
Local Congressman Republican Charlie Dent says the Asalis are not refugees and spent years going through the proper channels.
It's clear to me that this proposal was not properly vetted, it was not processed, it was rushed, and it wasn't given the kind of consideration it should have been.
This afternoon, Allentown's newest residents celebrated their U.S. arrival in their new home. Attorneys for the Asali family tell me that there's no way the family would be asked to leave. Scott, that's because they're now considered permanent residents.
Jerika Duncan in Allentown tonight. A man who set fire to a mosque in Fort Pierce, Florida, was sentenced today to 30 years. It was the same mosque the Orlando nightclub shooter attended. Joseph Schreiber pleaded no contest. He's an ex-con who posted anti-Islamic rants online. The mosque was destroyed in September on the 15th anniversary of 9/11. The Senate is expected to vote tomorrow on President Trump's nominee for Education Secretary, and this one is a cliffhanger. Here's our congressional correspondent, Nancy Cordes.
The debate over Betsy DeVos followed senators home this weekend as protests popped up outside the state offices of several Republicans.
DeVos are lost!
Here in Washington, the pressure is even more intense.
Good afternoon, Senator Susan Collins' office.
The Senate switchboard swamped by hundreds of thousands of calls.
So he is not supportive of this nominee.
Some Democratic senators took their own turns at the phones.
So she's really way outside of the mainstream of.
And even turned to school kids to help make their case.
We must oppose Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education.
The future depends on it. President Trump chose the 59-year-old billionaire because of her longtime support for school vouchers, a cause many Republicans support. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
The real debate is generations of kids that are stuck in underperforming schools.
But teachers groups worry DeVos will move dollars out of public schools.
She has absolutely no experience.
That lack of experience led to some rocky moments at her confirmation hearing.
So were you unaware when I just asked you about the IDEA that it was a federal law?
I may have confused it.
Every Senate Democrat and 2 Republicans have vowed to vote against her tomorrow, putting DeVos on the edge of defeat. Massachusetts Democrat Elizabeth Warren.
Just one more Republican. That's all we need. Just one.
But as of right now, the Senate appears to be split 50-50, which means Vice President Pence will have to cast the tie-breaking vote tomorrow. And that's a first, Scott, for a cabinet-level position.
Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill. Coming up next on the CBS Evening News, Super Bowl ads, usually out to make you laugh, take a serious turn.
It's a very big fluffy fun.
Where's the beef?
When I hear your new ideas, I'm reminded of that ad. Where's the beef? Yeah.
The 1984 Wendy's Super Bowl ad finding its way into the presidential campaign. Well, this year, in something of an end reverse, politics found its way into the Super Bowl ads. Here's Don Daler.
Do I tell her that her grandpa's worth more than her grandma?
Super Bowl 51 saw a relatively new player in the ad game.
Do I tell her that
ideology?
She will automatically be valued as less than every man she ever meets?
Audi vowed to give women employees equal pay for equal work.
Or maybe I'll be able to tell her something different.
Airbnb promoted its commitment to housing refugees from a multicultural world.
I want to brew a beer.
Welcome to America. Anheuser-Busch spent $10 million plus production costs for a 1-minute spot about how the company co-founder immigrated to America.
Eberhard Anheuser. Dolphus Busch.
Newcomer 84 Lumber showed a mother and daughter also making their way to America, but the ad was edited after Fox Network complained. So viewers saw this, but had to go to the internet to see their original in. at an enormous wall.
Now, we know Lowe's, we know Home Depot, and guess what? Now we know 84 Lumber. We would not have known them had they not done something really so disruptive and brave.
Rob Schwartz is CEO of a Manhattan-based ad agency.
It used to be that advertisers would avoid politics, but that didn't seem the case last night.
Not only have the advertisers gotten bolder to make political statements, but the audience is more political.
It's a 10 Hair Care took a more direct approach, poking fun at the president's signature coif.
We're in for at least 4 years of awful hair.
One of the night's most emotional ads transcended politics. Hyundai's 90-second live commercial featured 3 American soldiers stationed overseas. With 360-degree virtual reality technology, the soldiers were surprised to find themselves suddenly attending the game with their loved ones.
As could be expected, social media exploded with messages both supporting and condemning many of the ads. Because of how long it takes to produce these commercials, some of them were conceptualized and began filming last year. Scott, that was back when Hillary Clinton was seen as the clear favorite to become the 45th president.
Don Daylor tonight. Don, thank you. And coming up, fire in the sky. The sky over Lake Michigan sparkled when a meteor streaked by. Police dash cams in Wisconsin and Illinois captured these images at about 1:30 this morning. Some folks heard a sonic boom. It's not known if the meteor landed in the lake or broke up in the sky. New York subway riders are taking action against anti-Semitic graffiti. Someone saw a swastika and turned a symbol of hate into a message of love. And over the weekend, an outraged rider who spotted these hateful words asked fellow passengers for hand sanitizer, and they wiped the graffiti away. That's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.